Hello again. Some years ago, when the BBC used to produce some good stuff, a play was broadcast called Fable. I say some years ago, it was in fact 1965, which means it was getting on for 60 years ago. How time flies. I remember seeing this play at the time and finding it most peculiar. It portrayed a Britain where black people ruled and white people were reduced to the status of servants, rather like apartheid era South Africa. It was in fact meant to bring home to white British viewers what it must be like for black people in South Africa. In the description to this video I give a link to a piece about this play. In short, it was an alternative universe in which black Africans had colonised Britain rather than the other way round. This device was, of course, pinched by Mallory Blackman and used for the Noughts and Crosses books, which share the same conceit. I was reminded of both Fable and also the Noughts and Crosses books last night, when my wife and I watched an episode of a thriller released last year called Witness Number 3. I give a link to details of this in the description to this video. We don't watch a great deal of television, but from time to time we like to find an escapist thriller, and this sounded like a good one. Although filmed in Ireland, Witness Number 3 is actually set on a rough housing estate in London. The heroine is a black woman, a hairdresser. She's a single mother with a son whose skin is a good deal darker than her own. The backstory is revealed as being that her mother is white, although her father black. This introduces the very popular motif in modern British culture of the black man pairing up with a white woman and having a baby with her. This topic, of course, used to be absolutely taboo in television and film at one time. These days it seems to be compulsory. As the drama unfolds, we notice something very odd. Although this is a rough estate in London, there are hardly any black people at all living on it. There is a menacing gang, of course, dealing in drugs and committing murders with zombie knives, but they're all white. They menace the black single mother who has witnessed the prelude to a murder by one of these white gangsters. This is all very peculiar because in the real world, all the estates in London which are menaced in this way by gangs are at the very least mixed places, and they're normally places with a majority of black people living in them. The gangs are almost without exception black. Offhand, I can think of Kingsmead and Pembury in Hackney, Broadwater Farm in Tottenham, and of course the Stonebridge estate in Harlesden. I cannot for the life of me imagine where this rundown housing estate in London is supposed to be, where a white gang is terrorising black people. Thamesmead across the river near Woolwich used to be a white working class estate, but only a third of the people living there these days are actually white British. In the real world, the colours would be reversed, and it would be a black gang threatening a white witness rather than the other way round. Where are all the black people anywhere in this weird version of London? There's hardly any to be seen anywhere. Everybody, other than the central character and her son, appear to be white. Does anybody know an area of London like that? My suspicion is that this has been filmed very much with the American market in mind. I say this because the crooked police officer, a white person, needless to say, is known only as Detective Whelan. In Britain, detectives are always referred to by their rank, as in Detective Constable, Detective Sergeant, Detective Inspector, and so on. I understand that it is different in the United States, which perhaps accounts for this. I've never heard any police officer in Britain being addressed as Detective Smith. The overall effect of all this, a completely white housing estate in London, terrorised by white gangsters wielding zombie knives and so on, is precisely similar to the play I mentioned earlier, Fable. This is a world where all the real roles of black people and white are reversed, and the effect is to give us a looking glass version of reality where everything is skewed and offbeat. It's an alternative universe, but one presented as though it is the real world, which is odd. Much of the drama on British television is like that, of course, these days. There are certain conventions which must be abided by. Gangs cannot consist only of black men, as is the case in the real London. Either they are all white, as in this instance, or at best they will be multicultural, that is to say, black and white men together. One very rarely sees a black villain, and most black people are virtuous. More often than not, they are professional types. White men are the bad ones. Either they are wife beaters, or, more often, they are foolish and weak, and need a wise black man to set them on the right path. Little wonder, perhaps, that I cannot really watch this kind of foolishness, which is why we gave up on Witness number 3 after watching the first episode.